I should have known something was wrong the moment I saw my husband's face turn the color of old newspaper. But I didn't. I was too busy being a mother on Mother's Day, too caught up in the small joy of receiving a package with my name on it, too naive to understand that some gifts aren't meant to be opened, they're meant to destroy you. My name is Patricia. I'm 63 years old, and I've spent the last 40 years of my life believing I knew exactly who I was married to. I was wrong. So catastrophically, devastatingly wrong that even now, 2 years later, I still wake up some mornings unsure if I'm living in reality or some twisted nightmare I can't escape from. Before I tell you what was in that box, or rather what almost happened when I nearly opened it, I need you to understand something. I need you to know where I'm watching this from, where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and tell me. Are you in Texas like me? New York? California? Somewhere small where everyone knows your business, or somewhere big where you can disappear? Because location matters in this story. Geography saved my life, and I didn't even know it until it was almost too late. And if you're settling in for this story, check the description box below. There are more stories like mine there, stories of women who survived what should have destroyed them. Mother's Day 2023 started like every other Mother's Day for the past 15 years. My son, Daniel, was stationed overseas. Army. 27 years old, broad-shouldered like his father used to be, with my green eyes and his grandmother's stubborn chin. He'd been deployed for 8 months, and video calls had become our lifeline. Pixelated faces and time zone mathematics. I love you, Mom. Stay safe, sweetheart. The same words over and over, like a prayer we both needed to believe. My husband, Robert, God, even saying his name now makes my stomach turn, had been acting strange for weeks. Maybe months. You know how it is when you've been with someone for decades. You stop really seeing them. They become furniture in your life, familiar and unchanging, and you miss the small shifts. The way he'd started sleeping on his side, turned away from me. The way he'd begun checking his phone with the screen angled away, like he was hiding something but not hiding it well enough to make me suspicious. Just enough to plant a seed. But that morning, he seemed lighter. Almost cheerful. He made me coffee, French vanilla creamer, the expensive kind he usually complained about, and kissed my forehead. His lips were dry, and they lingered there just a second too long, like he was memorizing the feeling. I should have known. I should have felt it in my bones, the way animals sense earthquakes before they hit. The doorbell rang at 10:47 a.m. I remember because I'd been watching the clock, waiting for Daniel's call. He'd promised to call at 11, Houston time. The package was medium-sized, wrapped in brown shipping paper, my name written in Daniel's handwriting across the front. Patricia Fletcher. My maiden name was underneath, scratched out but still visible. Patricia Henley. I hadn't been Patricia Henley in 40 years. I smiled. My boy, I thought. My sweet, thoughtful boy, sending his mother something special even from halfway across the world. There was no return address, but that didn't strike me as odd. Military mail could be complicated. I'd received packages from him before that looked like they'd been through a war zone just to reach my front porch. Robert was in the kitchen when I brought the box inside. I called out to him, excited, already imagining what might be inside. A scarf, maybe. Daniel knew I collected them. Or photographs. He'd always been sentimental, the kind of kid who saved movie ticket stubs and pressed flowers between the pages of books. I set the box on the coffee table, and that's when Robert appeared in the doorway. His face. I'll never forget his face in that moment. It was like watching someone see a ghost, except the ghost was standing in our living room, wrapped in brown paper with my name on it. He whispered, not shouted. That's what made it so terrifying. Don't open it. I laughed. Actually laughed. What? Why? It's from Daniel. Don't open it. Each word came out separately, carefully, like he was diffusing a bomb with his voice alone. If you've ever had someone you trust completely tell you something that makes no sense, you know the feeling I'm talking about. Your brain splits in two. Half of you wants to listen, wants to obey, because trust is built on years of small obediences. The other half rebels, confused and a little angry, because why shouldn't you open a gift from your own son? I reached for the box anyway. Not to open it, just to pick it up, to feel its weight. Robert lunged forward, actually lunged like a man possessed, and grabbed my wrist. Hard. Hard enough to leave marks that I'd see later, purple-blue crescents pressed into my skin. "Look closer," he said. His voice was shaking. "Patricia, look closer at the box." I pulled my hand back, rubbed my wrist, and stared at him. My husband of 40 years. The man who'd held my hand through my mother's funeral, who'd taught Daniel how to ride a bike, who'd promised me forever in a small church in Austin with yellow roses and too much champagne. He looked terrified. Not scared. Terrified. There's a difference. So I looked closer. At first, I didn't see it. The box looked normal. Brown paper, clear tape, my name in Daniel's handwriting. But then I noticed the edges of the tape. They were uneven, like someone had opened the box and resealed it. And there, near the bottom corner, almost invisible unless you were really looking, was a smudge. Dark red. Could have been ink. Could have been paint. Could have been blood. My hands started shaking. "Robert, what is this? What's going on?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took 3 steps backward, pulled out his phone, and dialed 911. I watched him, frozen, as he spoke to the dispatcher in a voice I didn't recognize. Calm. Too calm. Like he'd practiced this conversation in his head 100 times. "My wife just received a suspicious package," he said. "We need someone here now." "Yes, now." "I think," he paused, glanced at me, and then turned away. "I think it might be dangerous." Dangerous. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. I looked at the box again, really looked at it, and that's when I saw the second thing. The postmark. It wasn't from overseas. It wasn't military mail at all. It had been sent from inside the United States. From Texas. From Houston. From less than 30 miles away. My son was 8,000 miles away in the Middle East. He hadn't sent this box. Someone else had. Someone who knew his handwriting well enough to forge it. Someone who knew my maiden name. Someone who knew exactly where I lived and exactly what day to send it, so I'd open it without question, without suspicion, because what mother wouldn't open a gift from her son on Mother's Day? I stepped away from the box like it had suddenly grown teeth. Robert was still on the phone giving our address, and I was standing there in my living room. The same living room where Daniel had taken his first steps, where we'd celebrated countless Christmases, where I'd felt safe for 40 years, and I realized I didn't know anything at all. Not about the box. Not about who sent it. Not about why my husband had recognized the danger before I did. And definitely not about what he'd been hiding from me. The police arrived 8 minutes later. I counted every second. You know what's strange about waiting for the police to arrive? Time does this weird thing where it moves too fast and too slow at the same time. Robert wouldn't let me touch the box. Wouldn't let me near it. He stood between me and the coffee table like a human shield, and I remember thinking, this is the most protective he's been of me in years. Why now? Why over a box that might just be a misunderstanding? Except it wasn't a misunderstanding. I knew that. He knew that. And the knowing sat between us like a third person in the room, silent and accusatory. When the officers arrived, 2 of them, both young enough to be my children, they didn't immediately rush to the box. They asked questions. Lots of questions. Had I been expecting a delivery? No. Had I had any disputes with neighbors, ex-employees, anyone who might want to harm me? No. Did I recognize the handwriting? Yes, but it wasn't really my son's, not quite. The more I looked at it, the more I could see the small differences. The way the P in Patricia curved slightly wrong. The way my last name was too perfect, too practiced. Robert answered most of their questions. I watched him talk, and for the first time in decades, I really watched him. The way he kept his hands in his pockets. The way he wouldn't quite meet the officer's eyes. The way he kept glancing at me, then away, like he was checking to make sure I was still there but couldn't bear to actually look at me. One of the officers, Officer Brennan, according to his name tag, crouched down next to the box. He didn't touch it. Just examined it from all angles, his face getting more and more serious with each passing second. Then he pulled out his radio and called for backup. Specifically, He called for the bomb squad. The bomb squad. I'm standing in my living room on Mother's Day, and a police officer is calling the bomb squad because of a package that's supposed to be from my son, and my husband is standing 6 feet away from me looking like he's about to throw up or pass out or both, and I really realize, that my life is never going to be the same again. They evacuated us. Not just us, but the whole street. Mrs. Chun from next door came out in her bathrobe, angry until she saw the police cars and then just scared. The Hoffmans, the Pratts, the young couple whose names I could never remember. All of us standing behind yellow tape like we were spectators at our own tragedy. If you've ever felt helpless in your own life, watching it happen to you instead of living it, you know what I'm talking about. If you do, maybe hit that subscribe button, not just for this story, but because I think you understand what it means to survive something that should have broken you. And trust me, there are more stories like this in the description box below. Stories that'll make you grateful for the life you have, even when it feels hard. The bomb squad arrived in 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. They were in full gear, looking like astronauts, and they treated that box like it was ticking. Maybe it was. I don't know. They wouldn't tell us anything, just kept us behind the tape, safe and useless and terrified. That's when I finally turned to Robert and asked the question I should have asked the moment he grabbed my wrist. How did you know? He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the house, at the bomb squad loading the box into some kind of containment unit, at the neighbors whispering and recording everything on their phones. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear him. Because I've seen a box like that before. My blood went cold. What do you mean you've seen one before? He turned to look at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Guilt. Deep, soul-destroying guilt. Patricia, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. Before he could continue, Officer Brennan approached us. His face was grim. Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher, we're going to need to take that box to a secure location for examination. But I need to ask you both some questions first. Separately. Separately. That word hit me like a punch. They didn't trust us. Or they didn't trust one of us. Or they thought one of us knew more than we were saying. I looked at Robert, and he looked away. They questioned me first, in the back of a patrol car. Standard questions, they said. Nothing to worry about. But I was worrying. I was worrying about everything. About the box. About Robert's face. About the phrase, I've seen one before. About my son, 8,000 miles away, whose handwriting someone had copied well enough to fool me, at least for a moment. I told them everything I knew, which was almost nothing. Yes, my son was military. Yes, we were close. No, I couldn't think of anyone who'd want to hurt me. No, there hadn't been any threats, any strange calls, anything unusual. Except there had been. I realized it sitting there in that patrol car, with Officer Brennan's partner, Officer Reyes, taking notes. There had been something unusual. 3 weeks ago, I'd received a phone call. Wrong number, I'd assumed. A man's voice, rough, asking for Patricia Henley. My maiden name. I told him he had the wrong number, that I was Patricia Fletcher now. He'd apologized and hung up. I'd forgotten about it within minutes. But now, remembering it, I felt sick. Someone had been checking. Confirming. Making sure I still lived at this address. Making sure I still answered the phone. Making sure I was still me. I told Officer Reyes about the call. She wrote it down, her expression unreadable, and then asked me to wait. She left me alone in the patrol car for 10 minutes. I watched through the window as she conferred with Officer Brennan, as they both looked at Robert, who was standing by another patrol car, talking to a third officer I hadn't seen before. When she came back, her whole demeanor had changed. Mrs. Fletcher, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has your husband ever been involved in anything illegal? Anything that might have made enemies? The question felt absurd. Robert. My Robert? The man who taught high school chemistry for 30 years, who did the crossword puzzle every Sunday, who fell asleep in his recliner watching baseball. No, I said. Never. He's the most boring, law-abiding person I know. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Or maybe she believed me but knew something I didn't. Mrs. Fletcher, we ran your husband's information through our database. There are some irregularities we need to discuss with him. I can't give you details right now, but I need you to understand that this situation might be more complicated than a wrong delivery or a prank. Irregularities. I felt the word settle into my chest like a stone. What kind of irregularities? I can't say right now, but I think you should prepare yourself for some difficult conversations. They kept us separated for another hour. The bomb squad finished their work and drove away with the box. The neighbors were allowed to go back to their homes, though most of them lingered, watching, speculating. Mrs. Chun brought me a bottle of water. The young couple took photos. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. Finally, Officer Brennan approached me. Mrs. Fletcher, you're free to go back to your house. We'll need to keep the scene clear for a few more hours, but there's no immediate danger. We'll be in touch soon with more information. What about my husband? Where is he? Brennan hesitated. He's helping us with some additional questions. He'll be released shortly. Released. Like he'd been detained. Like he'd done something wrong. I wanted to scream to demand answers, but I was too tired, too confused, too overwhelmed. So I just nodded and walked back to my house, past the yellow tape, past the neighbors, past the place where the box had sat on my coffee table just hours ago. Inside, the house felt different. Contaminated. I sat on the couch and stared at the empty space where the box had been, and I thought about all the things I didn't know. About Robert's face when he saw the package. About his words, I've seen one before. About the irregularities in his background. About the phone call 3 weeks ago from a man who knew my maiden name. And I thought about my son, Daniel, 8,000 miles away, who had no idea that someone had used his handwriting, his love for his mother, as a weapon. Or maybe he did know. Maybe, and this thought made me feel like I was falling. Maybe he was involved somehow. Maybe this was his revenge for something I didn't even know I'd done. No. I pushed that thought away. Not Daniel. Never Daniel. But if not Daniel, then who? And why? And what did any of this have to do with Robert? My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Maybe desperation. Maybe the need to know something, anything. Patricia Henley? The same voice from 3 weeks ago. Rough. Male. Certain. Who is this? Someone who knows what your husband did. Someone who thinks you deserve to know the truth. That box today? That was a warning. The next one won't be. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in my shaking hand, and realized that the worst part of this whole nightmare wasn't the box or the bomb squad or the police. It was this. I was starting to believe that the man I'd spent 40 years with, the man I'd trusted with my whole life, was a stranger. And strangers, I was learning, were capable of anything. Robert came home 3 hours later. He didn't look at me when he walked through the door. Just went straight to the kitchen, poured himself a whiskey, something he never did in the middle of the day, and stood at the sink, staring out the window at nothing. I gave him 5 minutes. Then I walked into the kitchen, stood on the other side of the island, and said the words I'd been rehearsing in my head for the past 3 hours. Tell me everything. Right now. Or I'm calling Daniel and asking him what the hell is going on. That got his attention. He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression I'd only seen once before, the night his father died. Fear. Raw, undiluted fear. Don't call Daniel. Please. He doesn't know anything about this. About what, Robert? About the box? About the irregularities the police found? About the phone call I just got from a man who says he knows what you did? About what, exactly? His face went white. You got a call? Yes. Same voice as 3 weeks ago. He knew my maiden name then, and he knows what you did now. So you're going to tell me what he's talking about, or I swear to God, I'm walking out that door and I'm not coming back. I meant it. In that moment, standing in my kitchen on Mother's Day, after being evacuated from my own home, after watching the bomb squad carry away a package meant to look like it was from my son, I absolutely meant it. 40 years of marriage didn't matter if those 40 years were built on lies. Robert drank the rest of his whiskey in one swallow and set the glass down carefully, like he was afraid it might shatter. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, like an old man. He was 65, but he looked 80 in that moment. "I need you to understand something first," he said. "Everything I did to protect you. To protect Daniel. To give us a life. That's what people say when they've done something unforgivable. Start talking." So he did. And I wish I could tell you that what he told me was shocking, some dramatic revelation that explained everything. But the truth is, it was worse than that. It was mundane. Pathetic, even. The kind of story you hear about other people you judge from a distance, and think, "I'd never be that stupid. I'd never let that happen to me." 23 years ago, Robert got involved in something at work. A side business, he called it. One of his colleagues at the high school, a man named Trevor Walsh, had approached him with an opportunity. Easy money, Trevor had said. No risk, just a little chemistry knowledge applied in a practical way. They'd make supplements, protein powders, workout enhancers. Sell them online, make a nice profit, retire early. Except it wasn't supplements. It was something else. Something illegal. And by the time Robert figured it out, he was already in too deep. He'd helped Trevor set up the process, had used his chemistry knowledge to refine the product, had even tested batches to make sure they were consistent. He was complicit, guilty, and scared. "I got out," Robert said, his voice shaking. "After 6 months, I got out. I told Trevor I was done, that I couldn't do it anymore. He was angry, but he let me walk. Said I'd done enough anyway. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. No." Trevor got arrested 2 years later. Ended up serving 8 years. But before he went to prison, he made copies of everything. Every transaction, every recipe, every piece of evidence that proved I'd been involved. Insurance, he called it. Said if anything happened to him inside, if he didn't make it out, that information would go to certain people. People who'd be very interested in knowing that a high school chemistry teacher had helped set up their competition. I felt dizzy. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "You've been living with this for 23 years? And you never told me." I couldn't. If I told you, you'd have been implicated too. And I really thought, it was over. Trevor served his time, got out 6 years ago, moved to Oregon. I hadn't heard from him in years. I thought he'd forgotten about me. Clearly, he hasn't. Robert shook his head. Trevor died 4 months ago. Heart attack. I saw it in the alumni newsletter. I thought, that meant the information died with him. That I was finally free. Let me guess. You were wrong. His son found the files. Trevor Jr. He's 31, lives in Houston, and apparently spent the last 4 months figuring out what his father's insurance policy was worth. He contacted me 6 weeks ago. Demanded money. $50,000, or he'd send the evidence to the people his father had been protecting me from. And to the police. And to the school board. And to you. 6 weeks ago. That's when Robert had started acting strange. That's when he'd started checking his phone constantly, sleeping turned away from me, looking like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Because he was. Did you pay him? I tried. I emptied our savings, took out a loan against the house. But it wasn't enough. He wanted more. He's kept wanting more. And yesterday, Robert's voice broke. Yesterday, he told me he was done asking. That he was going to make an example of me. That he knew today was Mother's Day, knew Daniel was overseas, knew exactly how to hurt me where it would destroy me completely. The box. The box. He told me it was coming. Told me what it would look like. Told me not to let you open it because if you did. He couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I sat down across from him, my legs suddenly unable to hold my weight. So that phone call I got, that was him? Trevor Jr. Probably. He's been watching the house, watching us. Making sure I know he's serious. Making sure I understand what he's capable of. And what is he capable of, Robert? What was in that box? I don't know for sure. The police wouldn't tell me. But based on what Trevor Jr. said, based on the way they reacted. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Patricia, if you'd opened that box, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Neither would anyone else within 20 feet of it. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, fighting nausea, fighting the urge to scream, fighting the realization that I'd been seconds away from opening a bomb meant to kill me as punishment for my husband's decades-old crimes. Did you tell the police all of this? Most of it. They're looking for Trevor Jr. now. They've got the evidence from his father's files that I kept, the messages he sent me, everything. But Patricia, you need to understand something. Those people his father was protecting me from? They're still out there. And now that this has blown up, literally almost blown up, they're going to know I was involved. Which means we're not safe. Neither of us is safe. I stood up so fast the chair fell backward. Don't you dare say we. Don't you dare make this about both of us. You did this. You brought this into our home, into our lives. You put Daniel's name on a bomb, Robert. You put our son's name on something meant to kill his own mother. And you kept it secret for 23 years. You let me believe we were safe, that we were happy, that we were. I couldn't finish. The words were too big, too painful, too heavy to say out loud. He reached for me, and I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't come near me. Patricia, please. I was trying to protect you. By lying? By putting me in danger without even giving me the choice to know? That's not protection, Robert. That's cowardice. He flinched like I'd hit him. Good. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting. I wanted him to feel the betrayal, the fear, the sickening realization that everything you thought was real was actually just a carefully constructed illusion. I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my purse and car keys, and headed for the door. Robert followed me. Where are you going? Away from you. Away from this house. Away from 40 years of lies. You can't leave. It's not safe. Trevor Jr. is still out there. Then I guess we're both in danger, aren't we? Except I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose this. You did. So you deal with it. I left. Just got in my car and drove, with no destination in mind, just the need to be somewhere else, anywhere else. I ended up at a hotel 15 miles away, checked in under my maiden name, Patricia Henley, the name that stranger had called me, the name that was apparently connected to my husband's past, and locked myself in a room on the 4th floor. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's lives, I called Daniel. Not to tell him everything. I couldn't, not yet, but just to hear his voice. To remember that something in my life was still real, still good, still worth protecting. He answered on the 2nd ring, groggy, because it was 4 in the morning where he was. Mom? Everything okay? No, I wanted to say. Nothing is okay. Nothing will ever be okay again. But instead, I said, I just wanted to hear your voice, sweetheart. Happy Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day? I thought I missed it. I've been losing track of days. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't send you anything this year. I closed my eyes against the tears. I know, baby. I know. The police arrested Trevor Jr. 4 days later. Found him in a motel in Austin, surrounded by evidence of his plans. Not just for me, but for 6 other people connected to his father's old business. The box he'd sent to my house had contained enough explosive material to level half my street. If I'd opened it, if Robert hadn't stopped me, I wouldn't be here telling you this story. The news coverage was everywhere. Local woman narrowly escapes murder attempt. Bomb plot foiled on Mother's Day. Teacher's dark past exposed. Robert's involvement, his crimes from 23 years ago, all of it became public. The school board launched an investigation. Old colleagues came forward with suspicions they'd never voiced. The life we'd built, the respectable, boring, normal life, crumbled in less than a week. I didn't go back home for 3 weeks. Stayed in that hotel room, then with my sister in Dallas, anywhere but the house that had almost become my tomb. Robert called every day. Left voicemails I didn't listen to. Sent texts I didn't read. He wanted forgiveness, or understanding, or maybe just absolution. I had none of those things to give him. Daniel came home on emergency leave. 27 years old, my strong, capable son, and I watched him break down when I told him everything. Not just about the box, but about his father's lies, about the danger we'd all been in without knowing. He wanted to confront Robert, wanted to rage and blame and hurt him the way we'd been hurt. I told him no. Told him revenge wouldn't fix anything, wouldn't undo the past, wouldn't make us safer or happier or whole again. But I was lying. Because I wanted revenge. God help me, I wanted it so badly I could taste it. Not the violent kind, not the explosive kind. But the kind that destroys a person from the inside out, slowly, completely, irreversibly. So I gave Robert exactly what he'd given me, a choice made in secret that would change everything. I went back to the house on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew he'd be at his lawyer's office. Went through his things methodically, carefully, like an archaeologist excavating a life. Found the evidence he'd kept from Trevor Sr.'s operation, the insurance policy he'd held onto for 2 decades, the proof of his involvement that he'd hidden in a box in the garage labeled Christmas Decorations 1999. And I made copies. Then I made copies of the copies. And I sent them everywhere. To the people Trevor Sr. had been protecting him from. To investigative journalists who specialized in cold cases. To the district attorney's office with a detailed letter explaining everything Robert had told me. To the school board with a list of dates and names and transactions that proved he'd been lying for years. To our neighbors, our friends, everyone who'd ever thought they knew Robert Fletcher. I destroyed him. Completely. Methodically. Without mercy. The same way he'd destroyed my sense of safety, my ability to trust, my belief that the man I'd spent 40 years with was who he said he was. The police came to question me about the leaks. I played dumb. Said someone must have hacked Robert's files, said I had no idea how the information got out, said I was as shocked as anyone. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't prove anything. And honestly, I don't think they cared. Robert was guilty. Everyone knew it. If his wife had been the one to expose him, well, that seemed like justice to them. Robert was arrested 6 weeks after Trevor Jr. Charged with conspiracy, manufacturing controlled substances, obstruction of justice for hiding evidence all those years. His lawyer tried to argue that he'd been coerced, that he'd been scared, that he'd done everything to protect his family. The judge didn't care. Neither did I. He's serving 8 years. The same sentence Trevor Sr. served. Poetic, I suppose. Or pathetic. I haven't decided which. I filed for divorce while he was awaiting trial. He didn't contest it. Signed the papers without a fight, though he did write me a letter afterward. I burned it without reading it. Whatever he had to say, I didn't need to hear. Some things can't be explained away or apologized for or fixed. Some betrayals are too deep, too complete, too unforgivable. Daniel took it hard. Still blames himself somehow, like if he'd been home, if he'd been there, somehow this wouldn't have happened. I keep telling him that's not true, that this started long before he was born, that his father's choices were his father's alone. But guilt doesn't listen to logic. Neither does love. He still visits Robert in prison once a month. Says everyone deserves a second chance, even people who don't deserve forgiveness. He gets that from me, I think. The stubborn belief in redemption, even when redemption seems impossible. I moved out of the house. Couldn't live there anymore, couldn't walk through rooms where I'd been happy and realize it had all been built on a foundation of lies. Bought a small condo in the city, started teaching art classes at the community center, began building a life that was actually mine and not just a shared delusion. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If exposing Robert, destroying his reputation, ensuring he went to prison, if all of that was worth it. If revenge made me feel better. It didn't. But that's not why I did it. I did it because he took away my choice. For 23 years, he made decisions about my life, my safety, my future, without giving me the information I needed to choose for myself. He decided I was safer not knowing, decided he was protecting me by lying, decided he had the right to put me in danger because it was more convenient than facing the consequences of his actions. So I took away his choice. Made decisions about his life, his safety, his future, without asking his permission or considering his feelings. And maybe that makes me vindictive. Maybe it makes me cruel. Maybe it makes me just as bad as he was. But at least I can look at myself in the mirror now. At least I know exactly who I am and what I'm capable of and what I'll do to survive. I'm not the woman I was a year ago, the one who believed in safety and trust and the permanence of love. That woman died when she almost opened a box on Mother's Day. The woman who emerged from that ashes is harder, colder, less forgiving. But she's real. And she's mine. And she's not afraid anymore. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for understanding, for not judging too harshly. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me I'm not alone in this strange, painful, necessary transformation. And check the description box below. There are more stories there like mine. Stories of women who survived what should have destroyed them. Who chose themselves when everyone else expected them to choose loyalty or silence or forgiveness. Who learned that sometimes the only way to heal is to burn everything down and build something new from the ashes. I still haven't spoken to Robert since the divorce was finalized. Haven't read his letters, haven't taken his calls, haven't given him the closure he seems to need. Daniel asks me sometimes if I'll ever forgive him, if I'll ever visit, if I'll ever want to hear what he has to say now that he's had time to reflect on what he did. The answer is no. Not because I'm holding on to anger, though God knows I have every right to, but because forgiveness would require me to believe that what he did was somehow forgivable. And it's not. You don't get to put your wife's life in danger for 2 decades, let her walk around thinking she's safe when she's actually a target, let her love you and trust you and build a life with you while you're hiding bombs in the foundation, and then expect forgiveness just because you're sorry now that you got caught. Sorry doesn't bring back the 23 years I spent living a lie. Sorry doesn't erase the nightmares I still have about opening that box, about what would have happened if Robert hadn't been there, if he'd been at work or out with friends or anywhere else. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that I flinch now when packages arrive, that I check the sender information 3 times before I touch anything, that I've developed anxiety that wakes me up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing and my hands shaking. Sorry is just a word people use when they want you to make them feel better about the terrible things they've done. But here's what I've learned, and this is important, so if you're still with me, really hear this: revenge isn't about making yourself feel better. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about refusing to be the victim in someone else's story. It's about standing up and saying, you hurt me, you lied to me, you endangered me, and I'm not going to pretend that's okay just because it's easier for everyone if I stay quiet and forgive and move on. Some people will tell you that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But I'm not holding on to anger. I'm holding on to my right to be angry. There's a difference. Anger kept me alive when grief would have destroyed me. Anger gave me the strength to leave, to expose, to rebuild. Anger told me I was worth more than being someone's collateral damage. And maybe someday that anger will fade. Maybe someday I'll wake up and realize I haven't thought about Robert or Trevor Jr. or that box in weeks. Maybe I'll reach a place where the betrayal doesn't define me anymore, where I can think about the good years, because there were good years, real moments of happiness that I refused to let him take from me, without the bitter taste of deception ruining the memory. But I'm not there yet. And I don't know if I ever will be. And I've made peace with that. 3 months ago, I got a letter from Trevor Jr. He's in prison too, serving 25 years for attempted murder, domestic terrorism, and about a dozen other charges. His lawyer must have advised him not to write to me, but he did anyway. In the letter, he said he was sorry. Said he never really intended to hurt anyone, that he was just angry about his father, angry about the people who'd destroyed his family, angry at the world. Said he hoped someday I could understand. I wrote back. One sentence: your father's choices weren't my fault, and neither were your husband's, so don't ask me to carry your guilt on top of my own trauma. I never heard from him again. Daniel asked me about that letter. Asked if responding was the right thing to do, if I should have just ignored it, if engaging with Trevor Jr. was somehow dangerous. I told him that staying silent when someone tries to make you complicit in their justifications is more dangerous than speaking up. I told him that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to absolve someone who's asking for absolution they haven't earned. He hugged me then, my strong, brave boy, and told me he was proud of me. That I was the strongest person he knew. And I cried, because I didn't feel strong. I felt broken and angry and sad and lost. But maybe that's what strength is. Not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain win. I'm 63 years old. I've lived through a failed marriage, a near-death experience, the public destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. I've been betrayed by the person I trusted most in the world. I've been the target of someone else's rage. I've been afraid and helpless and so angry I couldn't see straight. And I'm still here. That's my revenge, ultimately. Not the exposure, not the prison sentence, not the destroyed reputation. My revenge is surviving. My revenge is rebuilding. My revenge is standing here, in my own life, on my own terms, and refusing to let Robert or Trevor Jr. or anyone else write the ending to my story. I get to write it. And I'm choosing to write one where I win. Last month, on Mother's Day, exactly 1 year after the box arrived, I took Daniel to brunch. Just the two of us, no drama, no fear, no looking over our shoulders. We ate too much, laughed at stupid jokes, talked about his plans to leave the military and go back to school. It was simple, normal, beautiful in its ordinariness. And I realized, sitting there with my son, that this was what Robert had almost taken from me. Not just my life, but moments like this. The simple joy of being with someone you love without fear, without secrets, without wondering what's hiding beneath the surface. He didn't get to take that. I didn't let him. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been betrayed, ever been lied to, ever been put in danger by someone who claimed to love you, I want you to know something: you get to decide what comes next. You get to choose whether you forgive or don't forgive, whether you stay or leave, whether you burn it all down or try to rebuild. And whatever you choose, as long as it's yours, as long as it's what you need to survive and heal and become who you're meant to be, it's the right choice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not your family, not your friends, not society, not the person who hurt you. Your life is yours. Your choices are yours. Your healing is yours. And your revenge, if you need it, is yours too. I'm Patricia Henley Fletcher, though I think I'm just going to go back to Henley now. Fletcher was his name anyway. And I'm still here. Still standing. Still choosing myself every single day. Thank you for listening to my story. For staying with me through all of this. For understanding that sometimes survival looks like revenge, and sometimes revenge looks like survival, and sometimes they're the same thing. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories of women who refused to be victims, who fought back in whatever way they could, who survived the unsurvivable, check the description box below. Subscribe if this resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their anger, their pain, their determination to keep going despite everything. Because we're not alone. None of us are. And maybe that's the real revenge. Not against the people who hurt us, but against the isolation and shame and silence they tried to bury us under. We're here. We're speaking. We're surviving. And we're not going anywhere.